Hello, everyone. Good to see you all. Welcome to Hope and the Mind, our third week, Narrative Therapy Integration with Andrea Wilson, me, your narrative therapist for Tend Her. So good to see you all again. And as Betsy alluded to, this week I was on fire with ideas on how to help you all further integrate and build into these ideas. And specifically, um, I got to be honest, I don't think I've ever felt that anyone has teed up my work as well as this Monday session did. I felt just watching it that it was one of the greatest explanations of why the work I do with narrative therapy is so essential in helping people get to the bottom of many of the mental health experiences, challenges, obstacles, and opportunities that people have, is really understanding that phase one of the understanding is sort of like what is the mind and how is it ruling, but phase two is and what is it latched onto, and phase three is and why, and where did those things come from. And there are many phases after that. But I just love the way that the Monday night content really tees us up for being able to talk about your mind and help you all go deeper from a personal perspective into understanding, what is this part of you that is your ruling class? Who's driving the ship? Let's get in there. So, to begin with, I'm wondering if any of you found it surprising that your mind has 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, and that is if you aren't stressed. No wonder we're all tired at the end of the day. That feeling where you just want to sit down, take a load off, and maybe stare at the wall for a little bit? There's nothing wrong with that. That is your body trying to say, hey, we've been driving a little fast here. Let's slow down. But the mind uh, likes to be in control. The mind will try to rule. The mind will rule if you aren't aware. And part of starting this work is also really understanding that we have come historically so far in our understanding of the human experience of cognition and of consciousness. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with René Descartes, the French philosopher. He is most famous for the saying, I think, therefore I am. Je pensais, donc je suis. And essentially, what Descartes' early postulating was if I have a thought, I create and it is true. If I have, the mind is essentially the gateway to truth. And what hopefully you've been learning these last sessions and also in past tenders that you may have participated in is that the universe is constructed through a very complex system, and that this little lens here is not the only way to be creating and recording what that truth is. So, in order to get to know your minds a little more, I've really focused the prompts this week on this idea that is so, so important to narrative therapy, which is called cultivating the witness. And I know I've talked to you all about this before, but cultivating the witness is really a metacognitive process. It is the looking at the self and the way we think, the way we are experiencing situations, the way we are reacting. It's watching yourself think. And so you really, you have to create I like to use the character of Andrea in sort of the third person, and then there's that inner narrator that I talk about so often. And it's the inner narrator that we can watch and see, what is the mind just running away with? And, is that really true? Where did that come from? And is it helpful? And so those processes and really looking at, how we think and why we think those thoughts are processes that we can continue through the lifetime. So one of the things I want to always reiterate about the narrative therapy work is that it is a spiral. And so we are going up the spiral, and sometimes we roll back a little bit and then up, and then we roll back a little bit. And in terms of kind of getting into the mind, Betsy and I were talking this week, there are, I'll use the word millions of ways to skin this cat. So it's not the most lovely saying, is it? But the point is, you're not just a nut to be cracked in one single way. You're not just a single story that exists. In fact, I don't know if any of you saw the movie Shrek, and Shrek says, ogres have layers. Well, your mind, I like to think of it as the onion that has layers that Shrek is describing. And we have to peel back and peel back and peel back. And maybe you start from this direction, and maybe you start from that direction. Maybe you're coming in over here from the body. Maybe you're coming from the past. Maybe you're coming from the future. Maybe you're coming from the present. Maybe it's this metaphor. Maybe it's this thought. These um, these minds that we have created are layer upon layer that have come from our ancestry, our DNA, our intergenerational trauma, our prenatal experiences in utero, our lived experience as in childhood, and then all of the layers since then. And so the idea, that you could just do this once and it's like, well, there it is. That's the story I was living, and this is the story I'm going to live now. It does not work that way. But that is the beauty of this process. And it's one of the things I get most passionate about with my work, and what has always felt like such a natural progression from my previous work as a writer and working with the Iowa Writers House is that my literary training teaches me how to bring you in from all of these different angles. So today we are going to start simply from that witness perspective of looking at what is happening inside that mind. Where is that sort of inner narrator or that voice in the head or those thoughts that are just kind of, running on repeat? Let's do some observing. All right, so your first prompt is, in what ways has your mind thought it is in charge? What patterns do you notice? And Betsy shared with us that, there's more information that travels from the heart to the mind than from the mind to the heart. And yet, for many of us, and maybe not for all of you, but at any given time, the mind believes that it is what has the repository of truth. And so in your own life, what ways do you see the mind driving, the mind controlling, but also a sense of maybe assuredness that sometimes steamrolls curiosity, or maybe ways where you're noticing that the mind is driving your day because of the way it feels in your body. Betsy talked about we can live in the ahead of ourselves, above ourselves, to the side of ourselves. But definitely when you are so future focused and you are leaning in and really driving your day almost with that to-do list, the mind is definitely in control. So a little bit of leading tip there for any of you that are checklist folks, that might be a hint in terms of how you might want to answer this prompt. So in what ways has your mind believed it is in charge? What patterns do you notice? I'll give you all a moment if you want to pause. Okay. Prompt 2. Let's discuss rumination. And rumination is, you could think of it, because I gave you the spiral earlier, you could just think of that going around on a racetrack on the same plane over and over and over again. So new information is not coming in that moment. You are not approaching it with curiosity. You are not coming at it from different directions, but those thoughts are on replay. The track's on repeat. So rumination can also be a place that the story of our lives lives inside of us. And part of discovering how to heal is looking at, when you start unpeeling this onion, what is this pattern as it relates to the way your story lives inside of you? So when I'm asking you about the landscape of your mind and the way rumination creates story, I'm asking you, is the story on repeat? Is the story repressed? Do you access it, once a year on your birthday? It is a very, and I'm discovering this more and more. There are some generations of women, um, my grandmother's age, my mother and I have talked about this. I don't have grandparents anymore, but I know very deeply that my grandmothers did not think about themselves. They did not sit around and go, I think therefore I am. Nope, just I think I know who. I mean, Jeanette and Leela got up every day and figured out how to how to make sure everyone in the family survived, how to make sure there was food on the table, there were clean clothes, all of the things that needed to get done. So what we have now is sort of this privilege of time and space to be able to do this thinking, not only as a ruling class people, but a much wider breadth of people are finding the time and space to explore these inner issues. And yet, the story of who we are is still running somewhere on repeat. And so this question of how do you experience rumination is basically asking you, when does the story play? How does it come up? Are there sort of trigger points or entry points into it? So I mentioned a birthday. A birthday is a really common time to sort of, I think, access the story with intention. What was the last year? What is the future? And those are often related to, who am I already? But other places that you might be experiencing your story coming up would be any time that you're asked to do something that you feel fearful of, that you feel a sense of self-doubt. Not everyone has their story come up like this, but I'll give you an example of myself. When I was a young girl, I grew up in a small town, Columbus Junction, half an hour, actually 37 minutes from here. And athletics was such a big part of the cultural identity of that town. And I was not great at sports. Turns out this is where I need to be playing. But give me a ball and I'll find a way to fumble it. So you can hear my story right there, can't you? But my early experiences were that because the sports kind of scene or arena or anything to do with athletics triggered a sense of doubt, my story of like, I can't do those things then attached to anytime that sort of ask of me in life comes up. So even today, if someone says like, hey, Andrea, do you want to join the university's, women's slow pitch softball league? What comes up to me is the story of, if you give me a ball, I'll find a way to fumble it. There are so many other ways that I could tell you that story. I could tell you about the way that I actually found out in fourth or fifth grade that I was a really good batter at softball, that I had like a fairly strong swing and connected with the ball more often than not. I could tell you about this great catch I made. I mean, there are so many ways I could have answered the question, would you like to play, Andrea, but in my mind, what triggers is the story of, I'm not good at those things. So the story that we have attaches to feelings, is accessed through our neural pathways. So I want you to think about, when does your story come up? When do you allow yourself to think about your story? But also, like, when does some of the old tapes start playing? That's not who you are. You can't do that. Or you did that once, or you tried that and it didn't work. Whatever the thing is, I want you to really take some time on this prompt to sort of explore when the stories come up. And they don't all have to be the negative stories, but I do think that that's a place to start, because we have a nervous system imprint of when those moments of pain and self-doubt have come up. So in terms of trying to access your patterns to get those first onion peels off, starting with the ouch can be a place to look. All right, I'll let you pause for a minute. All right. A lot of prompts this week. Keep it going. So next one is, how do you think that other people's thoughts might be influencing yours? So Betsy talked about the idea that we can, through our sort of attunement to others, take on their thoughts and ideas and sort of like their neurological frequency. And so you've had a certain sense of how you felt about yourself in the day. Someone shared a story of their own. Maybe they'd watched the news. Maybe they were worried. And then those thoughts became your thoughts and then became part of your rumination story. Well, it's important to know, in just the same way, what are the on-roads that your story gets going in rumination? It's also good to know, how do other people's stories enter you, so to speak? How do those stories take root inside of you? And I'll go ahead and give you the next one, which is, how does social media impact you in this same sense? So in what way does sort of the world of the digital space and all of the kind of scrolling, drinking through the fire hose of stories affect the way you see yourself, life, and your own story? And what ways does that get in and potentially paralyze you from continuing to live in your own sense of agency? Okay, I'll let you pause. All right. So now we're looking at this idea of cynicism. And I love that Betsy kind of gave you this definition. It is the worldview that in general people are greedy, selfish, and dishonest. Hearing this just really kind of put like a fine tune for me on the way we can live our story with a sort of lens in front of it. Did any of you ever have, or like play with as a child, one of those I'm trying to think of the word for it, but it's like you put these little glasses up to your eyes, and then you can put different pictures in it, and it changes, like, the scene. And I think my grandma even had one, maybe like a different kind of almost kaleidoscope thing, where you were looking at a single image and then you could put a color piece in there and it would change the way you saw the scene. This idea of cynicism being a worldview is such an important thing to realize, that not only does it exist, but that it is a choice that creates into the universe. And this is something I work a lot with my individual clients, and that I want to take further in the future work, which is the way our neurological system is co-creating metaphysically. But when we talk about this today, just even beginning to ask yourself, in what way does cynicism exist? What part, what way does it interact with my story? Is it a lens through which I see everything? Is it a side character that sort of swoops in and, puts a little rain cloud over everything, and then I push out? Like, how does cynicism get in? What does it act like? How much power does it have there? Is it a permanent guest? Is it a constant lens? Do you wear it all the time, or does it come on Fridays? So I give you the opportunity on this prompt as well to just really explore, and you can be reminded that you're in a safe space where it's your journal. And no one's going to read it or judge you. And it also seems important to remind you that you are not alone, that there's no flaw in you, in the sense that um, there aren't millions of people in the world struggling with the same things or working on the same things. So we're all in this together. Hmm? All right, I'll let you write. Okay. I did have a little add-on prompt that is the end of those kind of first three, which was where I was really trying to give you an opportunity to go deeper into how the mind works in a bit of the negative way. And the last one is, how have you potentially glamorized cynicism? And how have you maybe allowed that to be the safe place? When we hold ourselves in a space of, it can't be better, the other side of that is we're also saying it can't be worse. So there is, in a way, a secret, shadowy safety in cynicism. Whew, listen to that alliteration. We are in that place of, yep, the world is on its way out. Society is on its way down. Kids these days, whatever those things are, we relinquish hope in the moments that we allow that cynicism to take root and stop contributing hope as an action into our worldview and our story. But cynicism can be a place that protects people from having to create the effort of the hope. It is an abdicating of an individual's agency and power to have to keep giving to the hope, keep showing up for it, keep acting into it. It's easy to see why cynicism has taken root in so many ways in this country, and also the many ways that we are blocked from talking to each other. Because in the case of all of these, I hope that what you're maybe discovering or able to see is that there are patterns, there are ways that you think, and there are also maybe ways that things feel crunchy or resistance, or like, this is not open for discussion, Andrea. And that's normal. But that also, those pieces of resistance, as we discussed in class one, represent something, which is the data to help us continue discovering the ways that we are not able to hold uh, neuroplasticity and the tension of opposites, and to continue growing and developing and evolving. Because once we stake our terrain as a permanent thing, it's not going to get better, it's not going to change, it's not any different, you can't convince me otherwise, we have stopped that growth energy. We have stopped the ability to shift, and ultimately we've set ourselves up for feeling depressed, because at that point you were stuck in the past and no longer believing that the present could be beautiful or that the future holds great wonder. All right. So, assuming that you had a chance to write about that, now I want to just jump to, let's look at the brain and the mind in a way that we begin to construct positively and also sort of harvest what's already there in terms of the good. So Betsy taught us that gratitude is a way that the brain stops the rumination cycle, or really all of these sort of negativity bias cycles. So I want to ask, what is already working for you? And again, this is a place where we don't naturally spend a lot of time. I was thinking today about the 100 miracles that had to happen for me to get here in this seat right now to leave this video for you. I had to wake up, my heart had to beat, I had to take breaths that came autonomically. I awoke in a home that I live in with a roof over my head and all of the modern conveniences and designs that made it possible for me to, leave the house without 7 hours of work to get there. And then I drove. I drove here. I covered 3 miles in 4 minutes. I am here in this space with the absolute opportunity to be able to be part of a course through time and space on the internet. Tend Her was created. I think you're getting the point. Like, there are so many positive things at any given moment that are happening for the fact that we get to exist there. But our brain is so focused on both the negativity bias is sort of its natural state, but also that nervous system is looking for threats. So we're looking to see, isn't it all terrible? So I can just prepare myself for it, which means it's not our natural conditioning to sit around and go, aren't we lucky? But there are ways that, hopefully in a non-cliche way, we can begin to cultivate the gratitude and cultivate a way of thinking and noticing and seeing. And that doesn't mean we have to be Pollyanna, but it does mean that we have to be the witness. We have to be able to see where the negativity was happening, and on the other hand, look around and go, okay, wow, there are some things here that are really working on my behalf. Flushing toilets. So I'm going to give you a minute to just write a little bit on what is already working for you. All right. So one of the terms that we use in narrative therapy is that all people have skills and knowledges. And it is this idea of everyone has gifts, and everyone's gifts are different. And that all of those gifts have helped us get to the place we are. And so not only are we like collectively a summary of all of the, modern miracles and the autonomic body miracles that helped us get to this place, but then there's also our individual miracles, our personal miracles, the customized version of you as an imprint of a human. And this is, again, the work you will do your whole life to continue to unpack and discover. And there's so many exciting ways right now in the field that we're looking at the way we can understand what our imprints are. But just to begin with, thinking about this concept of skills and knowledges, what do you have? What do you know about yourself that are your gifts? What do people come to you for? What do you find natural and ease-based and enjoyable, pleasurable to do? I never would have thought in my 20s that I would end up in my 40s as a therapist. But when I look back, my whole life, I loved to listen to people. I loved to listen to their stories, and I actually loved to listen to their challenges. I had a great sense of empathy from a young age, probably because I always missed the ball. But I had those gifts, and they've continued to cultivate. What are yours? What are the ways that you find that you're able to approach the world with a little extra give, a little extra sparkle, and a little something beautiful? Hmm. Well, hopefully you had a minute to write on that. So at the beginning, I talked to you about this idea that our story and understanding it is really layers and layers of unpeeling of an onion, and that we spend in my sort of work, teach many different ways that people can sort of enter into their story and ways that they can begin to really unpack and understand those layers. But I want to ask you to think a little bit about the way that you think you might be constructing that story from the positive side. So, in what patterns exist in the mind that are actually taking those skills and knowledges and applying them into your story? What ways do you see and notice that you allow the good to come in? So that, again, these are really, they're metacognitive exercises. So we're not yet in the place where you're writing the story itself, but you're looking at how the story is written inside of you. And just like the landscape of your mind was allowing rumination to happen, there are also ways where it probably feels a little easier for you to accept compliments. It probably feels a little, you feel more at ease in your gifts, or just allowing people to access them, to ask for help from you, to say, hey, would you mind taking a look at this? And you're, oh, sure, yeah, I do that. I would love for you to write about that and to really allow yourself to not worry about, am I humble enough? You are, but also how beautiful to get to recognize what you've been given, which is ultimately such a big part of our experience here as embodied spirits. Right. And so, even though I probably could have given you 20 more prompts, because this is such deep and wide work, I thought it would be fun to end with this idea that Betsy shared with us of being the asset-based journalists. And I want to ask you, how can you be the asset-based journalist of your own lives? So how can you really look at what is out there and see and collect the data on the things that are going well? How can you imbue that process into you? So again, it's not that you have to write the story yet of all the good things that are happening. It's not that you have to start recrafting your personal narrative, but I'm just wanting you to look at the patterns and see how might you start collecting some of those assets, and also what are the skills and knowledges, the patterns that you already have that actually incline towards looking for assets. When I was a little girl, I loved to go outside and just play in the yard. Also, I'm pretty sure I was just told to go out there and play in the yard. But the point is, I loved to see what was available to me. Were there new sticks that had blown out of the trees? Were there new flowers? Was there a beautiful leaf? Could I find a rock? Like, what did I have to make my art or my worlds or my whatever with? Those were my assets. So I was a collector of assets. What and how do you collect? What do you notice about yourself that is a pattern where you go through the world and you go, well, noted, or we have that available to us? Do you see it in the kitchen? Do you find that I have a friend, Samantha, who's the most amazing stone soup cook? I will open her fridge and think there is nothing there to eat. And she will open that fridge and be like, oh, we have a soup. Because she knows exactly what, one carrot and one leftover slice of beef and a little bit of cilantro and da 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 da. And suddenly it's a masterpiece. That's an area where Sam's skills and knowledges are also aligned with an asset-based approach. It's an abundance, it's a more, it's a look at all we have, look at all these sticks, look at all these ingredients. So for your final prompt today, I want to ask you, how do you look around and see all of the many things that are available? Is it through your children? Do you see all of their many gifts? Do you look up at the sky and out at nature and think of all of the riches around us? Like what topics, what environments, what stimulus put you into that mindset? This is a really exciting way to begin seeing how your mind works and how it continued to work for you. All right. I hope I haven't given you too much and that you're as excited about this writing as I am. And I look forward to seeing all of you next week for what I can't believe is already our 4th week. See you soon. And happy writing.